When he got near Bethpage and Bethany at the mountain called Olives, he sent off 2 of the disciples with instructions. Go to the village across from you. As soon as you enter, you'll find a colt tethered, one that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says anything or asks, "What are you doing?" say, "His master needs him." The 2 left and found it just as he said. As they
were untying the colt, its owner said, "What are you doing untying the colt?"
They brought the colt to Jesus. Then, throwing their coats on its back, they helped Jesus get on.
As he rode, the people gave him a grand welcome, throwing their coats on the street. Right at the crest, where Mount Olives begins its descent, the whole crowd of disciples burst into enthusiastic praise over all the mighty works they had witnessed.
crowd told him, "Teacher, get your disciples under control."
But Jesus said, if they kept quiet, the stones would do it for them, shouting praise. When the city came into view, he wept over it. If you had only recognized this day and everything that was good for you. But now it's too late. In the days ahead, your enemies are going to bring up their heavy artillery and surround you, pressing in from every side. They'll smash you and your babies on the pavement. Not one stone will be left intact. All this because you didn't recognize and welcome God's personal visit. You may be seated. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, also called Passover, drew near. The high priests and religion scholars were looking for a way to do away with Jesus, but fearful of the people, they were also looking for a way to cover their tracks.
That's when Satan entered Judas, the one called Iscariot. He was one of the 12. Leaving the others, he conferred with the high priests and the temple guards about how he might betray Jesus to them. They couldn't believe their good luck and agreed to pay him well. He gave them his word and started looking for a way to betray Jesus, but out of sight of the crowd.
The day of unleavened bread came, the day the Passover lamb was butchered. Jesus sent Peter and John off, saying, "Go prepare the Passover for us so we can eat it together."
Where do you want us to do this?
He said, "Keep your eyes open as you enter the city. A man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him home. Then speak with the owner of the house, saying, 'The teacher wants to know, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples?' He will show you a spacious second-story room, swept and ready. Prepare the meal there." They left, found everything just as he had told them, and prepared the Passover meal. When it was time, he sat down, all the apostles with him, and said, "You have no idea how much I have looked forward to eating this Passover meal with you before I enter my time of suffering. It's the last one I'll eat until we all eat it together in the kingdom of God." Taking the cup, he blessed it, then said, "Take this and pass it among you. As for me, I'll not drink wine again until the kingdom of God arrives." Taking bread, he blessed it, he broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Eat it in my memory." He did the same with the cup, after saying, "This cup is the new covenant written in my blood, blood poured out for you." that the hand of the one who is betraying me is at this moment at this table. It's true that the Son of Man is going down a path already marked out. No surprises there. But for the one who turns him in, turns traitor to the Son of Man, this is doomsday.
They became suspicious of each other and began quizzing one another, wondering who might be about to do this.
Jesus said, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. Oh, it would have been better for that man if he had not been born."
Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Is it I, Master?"
Jesus said to him, "You have said so."
Peter said, "Master, I'm ready for anything with you. I'd go to jail for you. I'd die for you."
Jesus said, "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Peter, but before the rooster crows, you will have 3 times denied that you know me."
Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will never deny you."
So disciples over and over again.
Now Jesus went into the garden of Gethsemane. He went there sad and very weary, to be alone to pray. Dear God, I am so sorrowful. Is there no other way? Dear God, if it is possible, let this cup pass away. Now Jesus went into the garden of Gethsemane. The olive tree bent over him and heard him sadly pray. Dear God, your son is sorrowful, but knows your way is best. Let love take hold of me, help me to be bold and free to do your will, to do your will, to do your will. And rest, Ubi caritas et amor, Ubi caritas Deus ibi est, Ubi caritas et amor, Ubi caritas Deus ibi est.
Leaving there, he went, as he so often did, to Mount Olives. The disciples followed him. When they arrived at the place, he said, "Pray that you don't give in to temptation."
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us.
He pulled away from them about a stone's throw, knelt down, and prayed, "Father, remove this cup from me, but please, not what I want. What do you want?"
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done.
He got up from prayer, went back to the disciples, and found them asleep, drugged by grief. He said, "What business do you have sleeping? Get up, pray so you won't give in to temptation."
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, even the evil within ourselves.
No sooner were the words out of his mouth than a crowd showed up, led by Judas, in the lead. He came right up to Jesus to kiss him.
Jesus said, "Judas, you would betray the Son of Man with a kiss?"
Judas said, "Hail, Master."
Those with him saw what was happening. They said, "Master, shall we fight?"
One of them took a swing at the chief priest's servant and cut off his right ear.
Jesus said, "Let them be, even in this." Then, touching the servant's ear, he healed him.
Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Jesus spoke to those who had come, high priests, temple police, religious leaders. "What is this? Jumping me with swords and clubs as if I were a dangerous criminal? Day after day I've been with you in the temple, and you've not so much as lifted a hand against me. But do it your way. It's a dark night, a dark hour." Then they arrested him. They arrested him, and they marched him off and took him into the house of the chief priest.
Peter followed, but at a safe distance. In the middle of the courtyard, some people had started a fire and were sitting around it, trying to keep warm.
Serving maids sitting at the fire noticed him, then took a second look and said, "This man was with him."
Peter denied it, saying, "Woman, I don't even know him."
A short time later, someone else noticed him and said, "You're one of them."
But Peter denied it. "Man, I am not."
About an hour later, someone else spoke up. "Really, Adam? He's got to have been with him. He's got Galilean written all over him."
Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about."
At that very moment, the last word hardly off his lips, a rooster crowed. Just then, the master turned and looked at Peter.
Peter remembered what the master had said to him. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." He went out and cried and cried and cried.
The men in charge of Jesus began poking fun at him, slapping him around. They put a blindfold on him and taunted him.
Who did you have time?
They were having a grand time with him. When it was morning, the religious leaders of the people and the high priests and scholars all got together and brought him before their high council.
They said, "Are you the Messiah?"
Jesus answered, "If I said yes, you wouldn't believe me. If I asked what you meant by your question, you wouldn't answer me. So here's what I have to say. From here on, the Son of Man takes his place at God's right hand, the place of power."
They all said, "So you would make your claim to be the Son of God?"
"You're the ones who keep saying it," he said.
But they have made up their minds. Why do we need any more evidence? We've all heard of him as good as say it himself.
Then they all took Jesus to Pilate and began to bring up charges against him.
They said, "We found this man undermining our law and order, forbidding taxes to be paid to Caesar, setting himself up as Messiah King."
Pilate asked him, "Is this true, that you're king of the Jews?"
"Those are your words, not mine," Jesus replied.
Pilate told the high priests and the accompanying crowd, "I find nothing wrong here. He seems harmless enough to me."
They were vehement. "He's stirring up unrest among the people with his teaching, disturbing the peace everywhere, starting in Galilee and now all through Judea. He's a dangerous man, endangering peace."
When Pilate heard that, he asked, "So he's a Galilean?" Realizing that he properly came under Herod's jurisdiction, he passed the buck to Herod, who just happened to be in Jerusalem for a few days.
Herod was delighted when Jesus showed up. He had wanted for a long time to see him. He'd heard so much about Jesus. He hoped to see him do something spectacular. He peppered him with questions. Jesus didn't answer. Not one word. But the high priests and religion scholars were right there saying their piece, strident and shrill in their accusations. Mightily offended, Herod turned on Jesus. His soldiers joined in, taunting and jeering. Then they dressed him up in an elaborate king costume and sent him back to Pilate.
Then Pilate called in the high priests, rulers, and others and said, You brought this man to me as a disturber of the peace. I examined him in front of all of you and found that there was nothing to your charge. And neither did Herod, for he has sent him back here with a clean bill of health. It's clear that he's done nothing wrong, let alone anything deserving death. I'm going to warn him to watch his step and let him go."
And the crowd replied, "Kill him! Give us Barabbas!"
Barabbas had been thrown in prison for starting a riot in the city and for murder.
Pilate still wanted to let Jesus go, and so spoke out again.
They kept shouting back, "Crucify him! Crucify him!"
He tried a third time. "But for what crime? I found nothing in him deserving of death. I'm going to warn him to watch his step and let him go."
But they kept at it, shouting him off, demanding that he be crucified.
And finally, they shouted him down.
Pilate caved in and gave them what they wanted. He released the man thrown in prison for rioting and murder and gave them Jesus to do whatever they wanted.
Calvary's mournful mountain climb,
And Jesus, he gave them to do whatever they wanted. At one point, Jesus turned to the women and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves and for your children. The time is coming when they'll say, 'Lucky the women who never conceived. Lucky the wombs that never gave birth. Lucky the breasts that never gave milk.' They'll start calling to the mountains, 'Fall down on us,' calling to the hills, 'Cover us up.' If people do these things to a live green tree, can you imagine what they'll do with dead wood?" Two others, both criminals, were taken along with him for execution. When they got to the place called Skull Hill, they crucified him, along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus prayed, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing."
Forgive us our trespasses.
Dividing up his clothes, they threw dice for them.
Forgive us our trespasses.
The people stood there staring at Jesus, and the ringleaders made faces, taunting. He saved others. Let's see him save himself. The Messiah of God, the chosen,
Forgive us our trespasses.
The soldiers also came up and poked fun at him, making a game of it. They toasted him with sour wine. "So you're a king of the Jews. Save yourself."
Printed over him was a sign, "This is the King of the Jews."
Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive us, O Lord, our trespasses.
One of the criminals hanging alongside cursed him, "Some Messiah you are, save yourself, save us."
But the other one made him be quiet. "Have you no fear of God? You're getting the same as him. We deserve this, but not him. He did nothing to deserve this. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you enter your kingdom.
Forgive us our trespasses, deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom.
And Jesus said to him,
And the power.
Don't worry, I will.
And the glory.
Today, you will join me in paradise.
Forever and ever. Amen.
By now, it was noon. The whole earth became dark, the darkness lasting 3 hours, a total blackout. The temple curtains split right down the middle. Jesus called loudly, "Father, I place my life in your hands." Then he breathed his last. People had gathered around as spectators to watch the show.
When they saw what actually happened, they were overcome with grief and headed home. Those who knew Jesus well, along with the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a respectful distance and kept vigil.
There was a man by the name of Joseph, a member of the Jewish High Council, a man of good heart and good character. He had not gone along with the plans and actions of the council. His hometown was the Jewish village of Arimathea. He lived in alert expectation of the kingdom of God. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Taking him down, he wrapped him in a linen shroud and placed him in a tomb chiseled into the rock, a tomb never yet used.
It was the day before Sabbath, the Sabbath just about to begin.
The women who had been in pain saw the tomb where Jesus' body was placed, and then they went back to prepare burial spices and perfumes.
They rested quietly on the Sabbath, as commanded.
Amen.